Things gon' change when I really hit the field. Undefeated chance, man, you know what's the deal. Tryna find a kid, I'm in the field doing drills. Boy, you just a sucker, you ain't never keep it real. 3 rings in my hand, I'm a warrior to the max. When I hang it up, they gon' have to give me plaques. Step up in the building and I only bring the facts. When I make a highlight, they gon' replay, run it back. Okay, always locked in, now I don't got time to lax. Saying he the best, he could take a lap. Batted 1,000 when you check the stats. Boy, is you ready? You ain't gotta ask.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Hitting the Field. I am your host for today, Sean Green. Jaret Kappelman is out. Today, we've got a bunch of wide-ranging topics to discuss, and who better to talk about those topics than my first two guests, Alex Funderburke and Okelo Pena. Alex, first of all, how are you doing after those crazy games yesterday?
I mean, it was a fun day of football yesterday. I'm doing great, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Aside from the Patriots getting blown out, I have my head held high. But let's ask Okelo. Okelo, again, we'll get into it, but your Steelers win another game, still undefeated on the year. How are you feeling, even though your fantasy team is 0-7?
Don't remind me about my fantasy team. I'm just working on tanking for next year, but I'm feeling good that we are the remaining kings of the AFC. And I'm just happy and continuing for the Steelers' dominance. I'm feeling pretty good. This is a great Monday to wake up to. UCF winning, black and gold dominates throughout Saturday and Sunday. So it is sweet to wake up. And the Cowboys lost. So I get to roast Sean Alex a little bit too. So how about them Cowboys?
All right, Stephen A. Smith, let's settle down here. All right. So let's get into the first game that really I was very shocked by. It was Sunday Night Football, Seahawks, Cardinals. I picked this game with Johnny Jackson and Kyle DeWitt on my show. And I said, listen, you look at the games last year, and the game that the Cardinals won, it was a running attack. Kyler Murray didn't look like he was throwing the ball a lot. What did you see from this game, Alex, that the Cardinals pulled it out in overtime with everything going against them the entire game?
I really think it was the defensive scheme. I mean, you could look at that last drive in overtime. They found a way to confuse Russell Wilson, and he's someone that it's very hard to confuse him, but they found a way to. They brought Isaiah Simmons down to the line and then dropped him back at the last second, and he ended up getting the pick. But I mean, offensively, Kyler looked like another Russell Wilson. Like, he was throwing dots. You know, he was making the right pass almost every time. He was making the right read. You know, he knew when to take off. I mean, the Cardinals team looks very, very good.
They do. They look really good, and a team that can compete in that division. That division looks stacked. Now, if you have the 49ers playing like they are, that division looks stacked. Okay, let me ask you. You have Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. If I'm being honest, looking at both those quarterbacks, Kyler Murray had the better day, and it kind of looked flipped. Russell made those mistakes that he usually doesn't make, and Kyler was making just the right throws. He had the one interception, but Kyler was not making the mistakes that Russell usually doesn't make. In your opinion, is Russell still the MVP for this season after this setback, or, was that game really telling of what the Seahawks actually are?
I think it's just one game when you look at it all around, Sean. I think Russell Wilson is still going to be league MVP, no question. I think what it was just a matter of a blimp in the radar. Most MVPs, when you usually have a season, they usually have that kind of one bad game, whether it was a mental error, because all around stat-wise, you look at it, Russell Wilson played still phenomenally. It just happened to be that late game interception, that late turnover that got the eventual Zane Gonzalez kick. So I look at this as just that at least teams know now how to beat the Seahawks, and that's making Russell Wilson have these mental errors. Because everybody knows when you make mental errors in football, you're going to lose the game. And you just have to kind of take away some of the outsets. They were without Chris Carson. They had to adapt with Carlos Hyde. So their running game was out of sorts. But one thing that I'm afraid of with the Seahawks team is their defense. And last night, their secondary got torched a lot by DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Trey Flowers was not looking it. I mean, they really need to get back Jamal Adams at some point, because if this continues, then Seattle's going to be really, I think, going to get torched in the postseason. But Russell Wilson's going to be fine. This is just one game. I think so far, compared to like Josh Allen or any other quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, it's just one game. So I don't think this takes away from anything that he's accomplished or what he will eventually finish this year.
A quick question for both of you. I'll go to Alex first. That division, like I said, is stacked. Who do you see coming out on top between the Seahawks, Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams? Who do you see getting that number one spot in that division?
I mean, right now you still have to go with the Seahawks. I mean, right now they still are in first, so they do look really good. And I think, like Okelo was saying, it was one bad game. They're still, I think, light years ahead of. I think they're easily still one of the top teams in the NFC. I don't see how they don't win the division. But if the Cardinals come back and beat them again, we might be talking about the Cardinals winning that division, which is crazy to think about. I mean, I think they might be like a year or two ahead of schedule.
Yeah, no question. Okelo, what do you see? Is it still the Seahawks or bust for that division?
I'd be hard-pressed not to say. I mean, I was thinking a little bit the 49ers, but they have so many hurdles to overcome with injury. I mean, Jeff Wilson just got hurt, so they now have to dig to the well again for another running back. The Rams, I still need to see a little bit more from them. I mean, most of their wins this year have been against the NFC least, so I need to see a more higher competitive matchup for them before I'm a believer. But I think all around Seattle has the division right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals creep up. The only thing that they have to fix, if Vance Joseph could get that defense that he had in the fourth quarter and overtime and bring that each and every single week, the Cardinals then have a shot, I think, at the division, because you can't tell me with Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, the larity of weapons that they have, that they can't give Seattle a little pressing on the neck on that division. So I would say Seattle for now, but just watch out. These cardiac cards might be coming.
Oh, it's going to be a race to the finish line. There's 4 teams in that division that are fighting for a playoff spot. And you can't look at any other division in football and say that all 4 teams have a chance. So it's going to be an interesting time. We're going to see how it goes. All right, let's go into this next game. Obviously, Steelers-Titans, it was the game that was circled. It was supposed to happen a couple weeks ago. It happens this week. 2 undefeated teams, only one would prevail. And for about, I'd say 2.5 quarters, Steelers were just running away with it. The Steelers looked like the way better team. The Titans looked flat. Derrick Henry looked like a normal man. He wasn't doing anything crazy. The Steelers were stopping him. And ultimately, the Titans did come back, but the Steelers held it down to win the game ultimately. Okelo, I'm going to wait to go to you. Alex, what did you see out of this game, and especially the Steelers coming out of this win?
I wasn't that impressed with the win for the Steelers because they almost blew it. And if it weren't for a missed kick, I do think they would have blown it in overtime. The Titans had all of the momentum in the second half. But they are still in first place. I do want to see how they look against the Ravens. If they can beat the Ravens, I'll be sold on them. But it was a good win, yes. But if they kept their foot on the gas pedal like they were in the first half, I'd be way more impressed with the Steelers team.
No question. I've been really impressed with them throughout the year. But like you said, I think the offense, I wouldn't say is one-dimensional, but they're very young. So when you're about to go play some of these teams like the Ravens, Okelo, you need to prove that you can beat a team like the Ravens, who's played together for a year. Ben was out last year. Big Ben was out last year. Now he's coming back. He looks great. You're a fan. You watch all the games. What is the biggest weakness on this Steelers team that will hold them back come postseason time?
It's their secondary. As much as I hate to say, because I think we have the best defense in football right now. Our run defense is unstoppable. You have T.J. Watt in there. You have Cameron Hayward, one of the best run stoppers and high-end defensive tackles, defensive ends in the league. But I think it's our secondary. Other than Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, we have Joe Hayden, who's kind of, I think, past his prime at this point. I mean, you saw the big 73-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown. I mean, that secondary was picked apart a lot in that game. And I think that's the biggest downfall. I think Pittsburgh needs to try to find a way to adjust that secondary, because if we don't get our defense to a hole to get the steel curtain the way that we need to perform, it's going to hurt us. I think our offense is fine. Obviously, Big Ben is adjusting with youth receivers, but it's showing up well. I mean, Deontay Johnson had his best career game on Sunday. So Big Ben can work with what he has. He's proven it again and again. That's what makes him one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL today. But if I'm looking at any holes on this 6-0 team, it's got to be the secondary because, like I said, you can't stop Patrick Mahomes, or if we play a team like the Ravens to throw the ball on us, So that's my concern. If we want to be able to be the future AFC champions and Super Bowl champions, we got to play on the cornerbacks a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, your secondary is a little suspect. There's no question. They're very young. Losing Devin Bush is going to be a lot bigger than what people think. Great young rookie, making huge plays early in his career. He played almost every single snap at middle linebacker. So having him gone, that's another hole that you could possibly fix at the trade deadline. Or you can go with the guy that started in his place, who was on the practice squad. They brought him up, and they gave him the green dot. So he was calling the plays on the field, which is very impressive. Let's move past the Steelers-Titans. Congratulations, Okelo, on the win. I don't know if they're going to win this week against the Ravens, but let's move on to two of, honestly, I have to apologize to Justin Herbert. Now, granted, it is early in his career, but
we all
coming out
do.
of this draft, I said I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's going to be partially a bust just because I didn't love what I saw in college. I didn't see him win the big games. I didn't see him make the right throws. And so far in his career, he's made the throws. He hasn't won the games, but finally Justin Herbert got his first W of the year and of his career. And then Joe Burrow, number one pick. We all thought that he was going to be pretty good, and he's proven it. Now, granted, his team is not as deep as some of the other teams because Joe Burrow musters his team to scoring drives, and then his team gives up a touchdown with 1 minute left. So, Alex, I'm going to start with you. Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow are obviously the number one and number two players right now for Rookie of the Year. We've got a lot of games to go, but who has impressed you the most to this point, and who do you think gets that Rookie of the Year nod?
So coming into the draft, I said from the jump, I was like, Herbert's going to be the best quarterback out of this class. Like you said, you didn't see it in college. I saw it in college. I saw this dude being great in the NFL. But I think the most impressive person so far has been Joe Burrow, just because the team around him is terrible, and Joe Burrow kind of keeps them in games. But I think the Rookie of the Year nod has to go to Herbert. I mean, coming off, he wasn't starting the season. He has 12 touchdowns already, 1,542 yards, and only 3 interceptions. I mean, that's really, really good. I think he has to get it.
Okelo, what is your analysis out of these two quarterbacks? Both pretty bad teams, but the quarterbacks are making the receivers look really good. So who do you see out of these two rookies right now?
I think it has to be unanimous that I have to say Justin Herbert. I mean, I remember a couple months ago, Sean, on the draft show when we talked about Justin Herbert, I was afraid with him that he was going to fall into line with the University of Oregon quarterback curse, because honestly, every first-round pick that has come there, Achilles Smith, Joe Harrington, Marcus Mariota, they haven't panned out to anything. And Justin Herbert seems like he's breaking the curse. And, I mean, he's been unbelievable for this Chargers team. I mean, you look at where the franchise goes from Phillip Rivers, and you were pretty unsure. I think Joe Burrow, it was an expectation that he comes in, obviously. Contrary to what Alex thinks, I think the Bengals are a better offensive team that with Joe Burrow than what the record obviously shows. But I think I look at where the team's going, and obviously the Chargers have more wins. Justin Herbert just got his first win, but obviously they have 2 thanks to Tyrod Taylor against Joe Burrow. But for me, Joe has kind of had a hot and cold, and nobody seems to stop Justin Herbert. And even if they do, it's kind of hard to figure him out, because I remember the Ravens game, the Bengals couldn't even get a touchdown against this Ravens defense. So, I mean, I want to see Justin Herbert maybe play competition like that, but I have to say from start to finish, I mean, I don't think he's had an interception. He's had 1 this year compared to Joe Burrow, who's been, having the usual quarterback rookie kind of start from day one. You have your goods, you have your bads. Justin Herbert, it honestly reminds me of when Deshaun Watson came into the league and how he lit it up his first couple games. So if forbidding no injuries, Justin Herbert's got to win Rookie of the Year, in my opinion.
I will say, the last couple years, these rookie quarterbacks, I don't know what it is. Usually you're like, oh, is it a bust, or are they going to be good? These quarterbacks the last couple years, Alex, they look like they're coming in with so much confidence that you almost know they're going to do good, which usually is not the case. Like you have the year with Jameis and Marcus where we're like, oh, these are going to be really good, and then they're busts. What is your analysis on these rookie quarterbacks? Now with Tua coming into the fold on Sunday, do you think quarterbacks are basically getting coached differently in college now to give them more confidence when they come into the league now?
I think it's a little bit of that, and I think it's also the NFL is changing. I mean, it's becoming more youthful. You know, the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses are kind of being phased out, and now it's a young quarterback's game. You know, there's no more Aaron Rodgers that like sit behind that quarterback for 3 or 4 seasons. You know, rookies and second-year quarterbacks are coming in the league and they're playing right away. So, and I think that has to do with it. Is teams are showing they believe in that young quarterback, and that gives them the confidence to go out there and ball out.
It'll be interesting with Tua coming in the fold. I think we're all really excited to see him on Sunday and what he can do. And if they made the right move, moving to him too quick, because obviously he wasn't ready at the start of the season. So I don't know what made them think he's ready now, but we'll see on Sunday. All right, last and final topic for this segment. There's a lot of teams that are going to need to make some form of a deal before the trade deadline comes up in a week or two, right? So let me start with you, Okelo. Who is one team that you think needs to make that final move or get that final piece to make a run at the postseason?
I hate to say one team. I was going to say one team originally, but I think another team needs some help, obviously, because of the injury that was just announced. But I'll start with that team, and that's the Cleveland Browns. I mean, you lose Odell Beckham Jr. for the year. Now, granted, you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who played well, Rashad Higgins, and you have Jarvis Landry, who I think now can finally get hot enough because now he's going to be the clear-cut number one receiver. But I think the Browns might be a piece away from really, I guess, solidifying their team and hopefully making that playoff push as they are. This is the best Browns team that we've seen in a long time. And now it's like, okay, they're just sort of getting there. They need now to bridge that gap. And I would also say Green Bay because Aaron Rodgers still needs help. And I think if the front office can help make a move in order to get Aaron Rodgers, your Super Bowl pick, Sean, past the uprising. Unfortunately, Julio Jones won't be available as we all thought he might be. But I think either of those two teams, they need receiver help. The Browns, I think they could just solidify their front end or their middle linebacker position, and I think they'd be right there where they need to be.
Now, Kel, with the Browns, do you really think they would trade for a receiver? Like, let's think about this, okay? Say they trade for a guy like A.J. Green. The Browns' cap space is not unlimited money. They don't have a lot of cap room to go get a receiver. Do you think? Do you really think they will trade for a receiver like an A.J. Green at that cap spot?
I don't think
they'll take their young guys. I
don't think that they'll maybe trade for like a high end receiver or somebody that's maybe above average, because I think it would be hard to get an A.J. Green, especially with the cap hit that you're going to take. Obviously, the Antonio Brown sweepstakes is over, so the Browns missed out on that. So I don't know. I think maybe they could look for somebody, maybe for the Texans. Maybe they could get a Randall Cobb or maybe they could get a Brandon Cooks. So, I think if the Browns could maybe look to that option, maybe they'll hopefully get the player that they need to maybe help their receiving core and get another deep threat to tag team with Landry.
It's actually a good thought. All the Texans wide receivers, I guess, are open for trade. So that's a good thought, Okelo. Alex, what is the one team that you see making a deal before the trade deadline?
So we were talking earlier about the Seahawks secondary and how they need help, and Jamal Adams coming back should help that. But I'm thinking the Seahawks need to go get an edge rusher. Maybe like a Carlos Dunlap. Somebody to solidify that pass rush to where now if their secondary isn't that great, they can go get the quarterback. Because if you're gonna have a weak secondary, you can sack the quarterback. You don't got to worry about it. If they can do that, I think that's the one piece missing from that Seattle team. And maybe they go get a running back. Because Hyde was not that great last night, but they made do. But yeah, I think Seattle needs to go get a pass rusher or a running back.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, they definitely need defense. That's no question. My pick is the Patriots. I think we both saw the game yesterday. We all know the problems that the Patriots have. Not so much the defense. Definitely the offense. The defense gave up a lot of points, but it actually reminded me a lot of the UCF defense. I said it last night where your offense is on the field for 45 seconds and your defense has to play 50 out of the 60 minutes. So I think, like Okelo said, with those Houston wide receivers, I think you could probably see the Patriots trading for like a Will Fuller or a Brandon Cooks to try to get some receiver help.
Would you like to see Brandon Cooks come back, Sean?
I'm the host. I don't give my analysis. I probably I'll just say probably no. I don't need the concussion issue. Will Fuller possibly. Will Fuller might be a good pick. All right, that's interesting. We'll see if those teams make a trade. I think it's probably a good bet that either one or two of those do, because they all kind of need the help in those positions. Alex, Okelo, thank you for joining me. Up next, we have Robert Husby and Take Me Out to the Podcast host, Johnny Jackson, joining me to talk MLB. So stay tuned.
I've already had a good week. This you gonna get an L, Sean. I've never been 0-2 in any fantasy league of records that I've been in, and it ain't gonna start this week. I promise you. Projections don't mean nothing. Come back next week when you catch another L, Nick, like you've been doubting my Nuggets. Okay, just get ready to catch another L.
What you say? That you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, because it is what you say. That it's just what we need. You decided this. What you say? What did she say?
I am absolutely flabbergasted and shocked, frankly, that the Rams are the underdogs. I say the Rams win at +2.5. It's not even close. Bet the house on the Rams. The Bills lose this one. I don't know why. It confuses me. I don't know.
What you say? That you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the best.
The Astros are going to cry. They're going to lose in 4, and they're going to go home, and they're going to cry and think about what they've done.
What you say? That you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the best.
Okay, so that's wrong. And I'm going Marlins because why not? The Fish don't lose in the postseason. Represent.
What you say? That you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, because it is.
All right, welcome back to Hitting the Field. Like I said, we have two very special guests. Surprisingly, but not surprisingly, both Dodgers fans. So we have host of HTF Bets, Robert Husby, and host of Take Me Out to the Podcast, Johnny Jackson. Guys, your team's one game away. How are you doing? How are you feeling? It must be a very stressful couple of days, but I'll start with you, Robert. How are you doing?
You know what? I'm glad you asked me today, because if you would have asked me Saturday night or Sunday morning, I would have been absolutely in a terrible mood. Johnny knows exactly what I'm talking about. The way Game 4 ended, oof. I mean, listen, I've seen this Dodgers team choke a lot in the World Series and in the playoffs, but good Lord, that was something else. And you know what? They got the win in Game 5. They answered back appropriately, and I'm feeling a lot better than I was 2 nights ago.
I can imagine. I don't watch a lot of baseball, but that was the biggest choke job that I've seen in baseball in a while. Johnny, is that a good sentiment to say about Game 4, ending of Game 4?
Yeah, it really gave me Game 5 2017 World Series vibes because, it's just such a back and forth brawl. And, at the end, guess who was there to blow the game? Kenley Jansen. It was a mess. Pedro Baez has shown over this season he's a very good pitcher when he gets clean innings to start off his appearances. But they bring him in with 2 men on to face Brandon Lau, arguably the hottest hitter in that lineup. And then he takes him deep. It's like, what are you expecting? You don't have the platoon advantage. Pedro, you bring him with runners on, which he's shown multiple times this season. He just is not equipped. I don't know whether it's a stuff thing, whether it's a confidence thing, whether it's just a luck of the draw, but I just don't understand it. And then the Dodgers got the lead back after that inning, after he blew the lead. And then Dave Roberts in his press conference said, the original thing for Pedro was him to finish that inning. Dave Roberts then changes his mind, lets Pedro Baez go in to blow another lead. It's exactly what they do to what him and Don Mattingly did to Clayton Kershaw for years. And it blew up in his face. Also, Clayton Kershaw, he's silenced the postseason doubters, has 2 wins in this World Series. We saw last year in the World Series, the Nationals only won the games where Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg started. That could happen with the Dodgers with potentially Kershaw and Walker Buehler. Hopefully it doesn't. I said Dodgers in 6 in March against the Rays. I hope it comes true.
So you were talking about really bad management on the Dodgers' part in Game 4. Now, granted, in Game 5, everything for the most part went right for the Dodgers. Robert, do you think the Dodgers' problem in those games that they're losing is just bad management, taking out pitchers too early, not believing in their pitchers? Because if we look at the series, the Rays' pitching hasn't been really great. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, for the most part, the starting pitching for the Rays hasn't been there. Tyler Glasnow's been pretty bad. Last night he wasn't too bad. He did get settled in a little bit after the first couple innings, but no, he hasn't been as good as he's been in the past. Charlie Morton was terrible in his start. I mean, he got chased early. He looked awful. Blake Snell's really been the only starter so far because the other game was Ryan Yarbrough and basically a bullpen game for the Rays. But for Blake Snell's been the only one that's really been good this series so far, and he's only pitched once. He's going Game 6, so he's probably the most dangerous pitcher in this Rays starting lineup so far. So yeah, I mean for the Dodgers, it's not really the pitching's been there. Really, the only one that's kind of been bad is Tony Gonsolin, who's starting Game 6 as well. But yeah, for the Rays, I mean, the bullpen's not been great, and they're supposed to have, they call it the stable. It's not been great. It's not been, with the exception of maybe like Diego Castillo, it hasn't been great. But yeah, I mean, the starting pitching for the Rays has not been good, and they're putting a lot of pressure on Blake Snell's shoulders to tie this series and hopefully force a Game 7. Which if Charlie Morton's the one to go in Game 7, it's going to be a little bit tough for the Rays based off his Game 3 start.
And you said the Rays have had very little postseason experience. They've been a laughingstock of the MLB for years. And then they come in to this postseason and they beat teams like the Yankees and Astros, 2 of the best hitting teams in the league. Johnny, when you look at this Rays pitching lineup and you look at this Rays team, do you think when you play a team like the Yankees and the Astros, and now you finally get to the World Series and you're playing another big hitting team like the Dodgers, do you think it's almost like there's no more gas in the tank for that pitching, lineup for the Rays?
I don't think so. I think the biggest issue with the Rays has been Nick Anderson. He's been one of the best relievers in baseball for a number of years now. And you see in the World Series, I think he's come in twice. He gave up a home run to Will Smith. And he gave up like an RBI hit to Jock. I mean, he hasn't been great. He hasn't been great all playoffs. The velocity's down. The command is down. The spin rate in all his pitches is down, so the movement's down. He is supposed to be that stopper who comes in the highest leverage situations, no matter where it is in the game, and just cuts the Dodgers offense in half. We knew going in the Dodgers offense was better. We knew going in their starting rotation was a little deeper. And we knew both for the Dodgers we thought obviously going into the series, the Dodgers bullpen was a question mark. They were very good during the regular season, but October and the playoffs are a whole different beast. And it's really been the Rays stable, like Robert said, that has really just sold games for the Rays.
Robert, you have Game 6 tomorrow, right? What do you said the starting pitcher for the Dodgers lost the last game in the series. What do the Dodgers need to do to listen? We both know, and I think we all know, the Rays hitting they've done really well this series. What do the Dodgers pitchers and the Dodgers team in a whole need to do to close this series out tomorrow night?
Well, I think Tony Gonsolin just needs to get a better start. This playoff so far, he's a rookie, so I don't think there's a lot of blame to put on him. This is his first time experience. He's going this far. He's a rookie. You can't fault him for that. He was amazing in the regular season. I believe I just saw right before we got on, I forget which magazine it was, named him Rookie of the Year. He's really, really good, and he's 26. Right in the prime of his career. But this postseason he hasn't been good, and his World Series start wasn't good. But we saw, last night we saw Dustin may bounce back coming out of the bullpen. I was worried. I was like, oh boy, what are they doing with him here? And he looked good. He looked good. I thought he didn't pitch that much, but he looked good. So hopefully we can see that out of Tony Gonsolin. Hopefully he can dig in a bit, and hopefully, maybe go 4 or 5. I don't know how short his leash is going to be considering what his start was, before. But no, it's definitely getting him going. You need him to get some good innings because I don't really trust the Dodgers bullpen going length. It's up and down, like Johnny was saying. It's not been there this postseason. So, I really don't need to see guys like Kenley Jansen coming in, Pedro Baez coming in because Gonsolin can only go like 3 innings or something like that because he's not pitching well. So yeah, for the Dodgers right now, it's trying to get it closed out with a rookie starting pitcher, and hopefully he can go a little bit farther than he has, and the bullpen can completely close it out and they can hit for him.
I know you both don't want to see this, but I think for a lot of baseball fans that really want a good series, right? The Dodgers lose game 6. Say they lose game 6. Don't you think it would be – I know, again, you're Dodgers fans, so I don't know if you would love to see this just because going to a game 7, nothing's promised. But seeing Clayton Kershaw possibly start that game 7 and win it for the Dodgers, Johnny, don't you think that would be almost like a cool storybook moment to win in game 7 with Clayton Kershaw as your pitcher?
Clayton Kershaw will not be starting that game. It will be Walker effing Buehler. That's what you get from a host with no baseball knowledge. But
you would throw him out there. You would throw. Okay, come on. It's not that hard.
Would I start Clayton Kershaw on 2 days rest in Game 7 of the World Series?
In Game 7, you do not start your best pitcher?
Walker,
you don't think
Buehler's
Blake
the best
Snell?
pitcher.
You do not think Blake Snell would be out there for Game 7 for Tampa?
Snell started Game 6. Why would he start Game 7?
You're gonna do whatever you can to win the World Series. It's a Game 7. You're not worried about rest anymore.
Maybe if they didn't have one of the best postseason pitchers of all time in Walker Buehler. But like for Clayton Kershaw to come in that game, it would have to be extremely, extremely long because you have Buehler, you have Julio Urias on I think 2 or 3 days rest at that point after throwing 4 2/3 innings, I think. And then you have a day's rest today, so I'm thinking in my head maybe Brewstar, maybe Victor Gonzalez comes out tomorrow. Kenley might pitch. I don't know.
Listen, Buehler doesn't have name recognition as Kershaw. To baseball fans, everybody knows Buehler is a phenomenal pitcher.
Kershaw is the greatest pitcher of the generation.
That's what I'm saying. So you'd want to see the greatest pitcher pitch in a Game 7.
Third best left-handed pitcher of all time. Also, Kershaw is the velo's down. He's not past his. It's not a matter of Kershaw being the greatest pitcher of all time and still the ace of the staff, at least in name only.
I'm just thinking storybook, Johnny. I'm thinking best story.
Storybook is great, but you know what happens if they start Kershaw on 2 days rest and he goes an inning and he gives up 2 runs? They lose.
Yeah, he gets yanked, and then there's no story. Then it's like, oh, Kershaw sucked, but you won the game.
You can keep bringing these storybooks out of the Sam's Club.
I want this storybook to happen. I think Dodgers fans like it.
Sean.
That's why I said, I know what I said you guys do not want to happen. You'd much rather Game 6 you win, you go off into the sunset, and everybody talks great about Kershaw. But I think a lot of baseball fans, Buehler doesn't have the same ring as Kershaw. It just doesn't ring the same.
Buehler throws 100 miles an hour and has one of the best curveballs and sliders and cutters in baseball.
I'm just saying, I think story. I'm thinking story, Johnny. That's all I'm saying.
I'm thinking Buehler throws a complete game shutty and then just screams the F word 76 times in the post-game presser. And then I see Clayton Kershaw holding a World Series trophy, and I cry my eyes out. That's what I'm thinking.
All right, we'll move on from that. All right, Robert, I know who you both will pick. I think it's a unanimous pick, but thank you, Jaret, for picking this topic. It's going to bring up great discussion. Who's the MVP of the series so far, guys? The one guy that has, been the best for the Dodgers or the Rays, I guess you could say. But Robert, we'll start with you. Who do you think's the MVP of the series so far?
Yeah, so I'll give you who my MVP is for the series, and then I'll give you just because the Dodgers are up 3-2, I think I have to pick a Dodger, especially because they have a chance to close it out. And then I will give you my pick if the Rays manage to force Game 7 and win out. Right now, for me, for the Dodgers, it would have to be Corey Seager. Clayton Kershaw makes a damn good case as well. 2 impressive starts. His last start, not great, but you know what? He got the job done. He responded well, didn't implode, and that's what you need out of him, especially in the postseason. But no, for right now, I think it's Corey Seager. Corey Seager is as hot as it gets. He would be one of only a few players that have managed to win NLCS MVP and World Series MVP, so that's an impressive stat. But the kid's been hot, and there's really only been one other guy that's been hitting better than him and has already set a record for most postseason home runs, and that's Randy Arozarena. And he'd probably be my pick for the Rays if the Rays manage to win this series. I think you could make a case again if Blake Snell has a really good start in Game 6. You can make a case for him. I think you could even make a case for Brandon Lau, but I think it has to be Randy Arozarena for the Rays if they manage to get it done. He's been as hot as can be, came out of nowhere. It's just been an impressive story from him. You want to talk about storylines? There you go. Randy Arozarena traded from the Cardinals for nothing, absolutely nothing, and comes out and is now like this amazing postseason hitter. It's been an amazing story for him. So yeah, Dodgers, Corey Seager, with a footnote of Clayton Kershaw, and then Rays probably Randy Arozarena.
The Arozarena memes are going to be crazy if he actually pulls this off. Kid's been playing really well, and he's been giving the Dodgers and every team he's played a lot of problems. Johnny, MVP for the Dodgers, again, I think you're going to probably pick the same as Robert. If not, I have an idea. But also, who do you think, if the Rays ultimately pull it out to your despise, I guess, who do you think the Rays would have as MVP?
Well, all right. So if the Dodgers win, if the Dodgers would have won in 5 games with Kershaw pitching Game 1 and Game 5, I would say no doubt Clayton Kershaw. He shoved, deserves it just for everything he's given to that team. He has so many back problems just because of how much he's carried the Dodgers for his entire career there. But Corey Seager has been great. But who I think has maybe been a little better, a little more impactful is Justin Turner. We saw 2 first-inning home runs in Games 3 and 4. Games they both won. But also, he's just been great. The defense has been great. He's made a bunch of great plays. Justin Turner, he's 35, contract's up at the end of the year. I can't think of many things besides Kershaw winning it that would make me as a Dodgers fan more happy than the man who has solidified the clubhouse, solidified the entire roster, came out of absolutely nowhere in the Mets, Dodgers style, picking some 13-year-old off the streets, and he becomes an MVP candidate the next year. If the Rays win, I think it's definitely has to be determined with just who plays the best in Game 6 and 7. Like Robert said, it could be Blake Snell if he has a good start in Game 6, but I like Brandon Lau. In both the games the Rays have won, he has been the key piece. With a clutch, I think 2 or 3 run homer against Tony Gonsolin in the first inning in Game 2. And then in Game 4, he hit the 3-run home run off Pedro Baez. If he doesn't hit that home run, if Kike makes that double play, the Dodgers probably win that game and have already won the series. But Brandon Lau has been absolutely clutch, and the Rays need it the most. It's weird. He only hits in games the Rays win. So hopefully, Game 6, you get him 0 for 4. If you get Brandon Lau 0 for 4, the Dodgers probably win that game, and hopefully they win the series.
So I'll say this in closing. The Dodgers, I know you guys won't think so, but I think the best thing that could have happened to them was Game 4, that ending of Game 4. Because I think they came out in Game 5 and wanted to punch the Rays in the mouth, and I think you saw them do that. I don't think the Dodgers are happy that they got embarrassed in Game 4. They should have won the game. Everybody knew the Dodgers, that was an easy out, and they blew it. But I think that ultimately might put the Dodgers over the edge tomorrow, Tuesday, Game 6, Dodgers-Rays. Make sure you tune in. Robert, Johnny, thank you for tuning in. That's been today's episode of Hitting the Field. I'd like to thank everybody that came on. Tonight, Monday Night Football, Rams, Bears. Robert Husby, thank God he's off the screen now, because I did say that the Bears, that might be an upset game. That might be an upset. So watch that. See, he's still here. He can't leave when I mentioned the Rams. All right, guys, that's been Hitting the Field. Make sure you tune in tomorrow to Just Winning with John Whitley. I've been Sean Green. Thank you.